The sun had long dipped below the horizon of the duat, leaving the golden sands of Egypt to glow with a spectral, silver light. In the Hall of Truth, where the breath of the living dared not enter, a different kind of life began to stir among the papyrus reeds of eternity. Hathor, the Lady of the West, stood at the threshold of the horizon, her eyes reflecting the infinite stars of the celestial cow. She was not alone, for beside her stood the 7 Hathors, the sisters of fate who weave the threads of every soul's beginning and end. They were the architects of destiny, the ones who whispered the first breath into a newborn and sang the final dirge. For the weary traveler, the air was thick with the scent of myrrh and the heavy silence of the necropolis, a place where time was merely a suggestion. A single soul approached the gates, a humble scribe named Amenemhat, whose heart was heavy with the uncertainty of what lay beyond. He looked up to see the 7 sisters, each draped in linens of pure white, their faces radiating a beauty that was both comforting and terrifying. "We have been expecting you," the first sister whispered, her voice sounding like the rustle of wind through the Nile Delta. The second sister held a sistrum, its bronze discs jingling softly to harmonize with the rhythm of the cosmos. Hathor herself stepped forward, her golden horns cradling the solar disk. Even here in the depths of the underworld, she was the mother of the sun, but she was also the mistress of the grave, the one who offered bread and beer to those who had crossed the great river. "Step forward, child of the sun," Hathor commanded, her voice a soothing balm to the scribe's fractured spirit. Amenemhat moved, his feet making no sound on the floor of the hall, which seemed to be made of solidified moonlight. The third sister unrolled a scroll of shimmering light, where every deed and every thought of the scribe's life was etched in celestial ink. "Your life was a tapestry of ink and prayer," she noted, her eyes scanning the record of his humble existence. The fourth sister looked into his eyes, searching for the shadows of greed or the stains of cruelty that often mar the human soul. She found only the quiet devotion of a man who loved the written word in the silence of the temples. But the duat is a place of many trials, and the 7 sisters were not merely observers. They were the judges of the soul's ultimate weight. "Is he ready to meet the great scales?" the fifth sister asked, her gaze fixed on the distant silhouette of Anubis. Hathor smiled, a gesture that brightened the shadows of the underworld for a fleeting, beautiful second. "He is ready to understand that death is not a wall, but a doorway into the house of the stars," Hathor replied. The sixth sister stepped closer to the scribe, holding a small amulet of carnelian shaped like a heart. "Take this," she instructed. "It is the memory of the love you gave, the only currency that holds value in the kingdom of Osiris." The seventh sister, the youngest and most mysterious, began to hum a melody that echoed the vibrations of the earth itself. As she sang, the walls of the Hall of Truth began to dissolve, revealing the vast, starlit expanse of the celestial river. This was the moment of transition, the pivotal point where the mortal story ends and the eternal narrative begins. Hathor reached out her hand, and for the first time, Amenemhat felt the warmth of a divinity that cared for the smallest of creatures. "We are the 7 sisters of fate," the sisters said in unison, their voices merging into a single, powerful chord. They spoke of the days when the world was young and Hathor had descended as the Sekhmet, the destroyer, before finding her heart again. They reminded the scribe that even the fiercest fire can be turned into the softest light, through the power of compassion. The scribe realized then that the underworld was not a place of punishment, but a workshop for the soul. He watched as the 7 Hathors began to dance, their movements tracing the patterns of the constellations across the dark sky. Each step they took created a spark, and each spark became a star that guided another soul lost in the darkness. "You see," the first sister explained, "fate is not a cage, but a map that you helped draw with every choice you made." Amenemhat looked back at his life and saw the moments where he had been kind, when he could have been cold. He saw the times he had shared his meager rations with those who had even less. The sisters nodded, for these were the threads that made his tapestry strong enough to withstand the winds of eternity. But there was one more mystery to solve before he could enter the fields of reeds. Hathor led him to a pool of dark, still water that reflected not his face, but his essence. "Look into the water of the west," she whispered. "Tell me what you see, and you shall find your place among the gods." Amenemhat leaned over the water, his breath hitching as the surface began to ripple with images of the past and future. He saw the grief of his family, but he also saw the peace that his memory brought to his children. He saw the continuity of life, the way the Nile flooded and receded, always bringing new growth from the old. The second sister shook her sistrum again, and the sound shattered the silence, calling forth the spirits of the ancestors. They rose like mist from the desert, their faces filled with the same serene light that glowed within the 7 sisters. "Welcome home," they whispered, their voices a thousand-fold echo of the scribe's own heart. Hathor turned to her sisters, her expression one of profound grace and eternal wisdom. "The thread is woven," the third sister declared, closing her scroll with a finality that felt like a blessing. The fourth sister stepped back, satisfied that no hidden darkness remained within the scribe's spirit. The fifth sister looked toward the horizon, where the first light of the spiritual dawn was beginning to break. The sixth sister tucked her hands into her sleeves, her task of protection nearly complete. The seventh sister stopped her song, allowing the silence to settle like a soft blanket over the hall. Hathor then placed a hand on the scribe's shoulder, guiding him toward a golden boat moored at the edge of the starlight. "This is the bark of millions," Hathor explained. "It carries those who have mastered their fate and embraced their end." The scribe stepped onto the vessel, feeling the wood beneath his feet transform into something more substantial than physical matter. He looked back at the seven sisters of fate, who stood like pillars of light against the encroaching dawn of the duat. "Remember," Hathor called out as the boat began to move. "Fate is only the beginning of the dance." The boat glided silently across the celestial river, leaving ripples of gold in its wake. As the scribe disappeared into the light, the seven sisters turned their attention back to the gates of the west. For there is never an end to the souls who seek the truth, and there is never an end to the work of the Hathors. They are the guardians of the mortuary, the protectors of the transition, and the keepers of the final peace. In the shadows of the pyramids and the silence of the tombs, their presence is felt by every mourner. They are the comfort in the dark, the promise that no soul is ever truly lost or forgotten. Hathor took her place once more as the cow-headed goddess, her milk the stars that nourish the universe. The sisters began to prepare for the next arrival, checking the scrolls and polishing the bronze of the sistrums. They knew that fate was a delicate thing, easily frayed by fear but strengthened by the power of the divine feminine. Each soul brought a new color to their tapestry, a new rhythm to their eternal song. They whispered to the living in their dreams, preparing them for the journey that everyone must eventually take. "Be brave," the first sister would whisper to the sleeping. "The west is not as dark as you fear." "Be kind," the second sister would add, "for kindness is the only light that carries over the water." And so the cycle continued, a beautiful, haunting rotation of life, death, and rebirth. The seven sisters of fate remained the constant amidst the shifting sands of human history. Empires rose and fell into the dust, but the Hall of Truth remained standing in the heart of the duat. Hathor's laughter could still be heard in the wind that blew through the ancient columns of Karnak. Her sorrow was felt in the drying of the rivers and the passing of the seasons. But above all, her love was the force that held the souls together as they navigated the mysteries of the afterlife. The seven sisters were the hands that guided the needle of existence through the fabric of time. They understood that every ending was merely the setup for a new, more glorious beginning. In the mortuary cults of old, the people sang to the seven Hathors, asking for a favorable word when the time came. They offered flowers and honey, symbols of the sweetness that Hathor brought to the bitterness of the grave. The scribe Amenemhat was now just one star among billions, but his story remained etched in the records of the sisters. For in the eyes of the divine, there are no small stories, only different parts of the great mystery. The sisters looked out over the vast desert of the underworld, where the spirits of the past wandered in search of the light. "Another comes," the seventh sister noted, her voice vibrating with a new melody. The first sister straightened her robes, her eyes focusing on the distant flicker of a new soul entering the gates. The second sister raised her sistrum, ready to clear the path of any lingering demons. The third sister unrolled a fresh papyrus, the ink wet and ready to receive the weight of a new life. The fourth, fifth, and sixth sisters stood in a semicircle, forming a shield of grace around the entrance. Hathor stepped forward, her golden horn shining like a beacon in the twilight. She was the mistress of the underworld, but her heart belonged to the light of the stars. She knew that every soul was a child of her own, to be nurtured through the darkness and into the morning. The seven sisters of fate began their chant once more, a low, rhythmic sound that calmed the chaos of the abyss. They were the masters of the transition, the queens of the mortuary, and the weavers of the ultimate truth. Their story is the story of every soul that has ever looked at the stars and wondered where they would go when the light faded. Under their watchful eyes, the dead found peace, and the living found the courage to keep walking toward the horizon. Thus is the legend of Hathor and her sisters, a tale written in the stars and whispered by the sands of Egypt. May your heart be light and your path be clear when you finally meet the seven sisters of fate. Thank you for watching this journey into the ancient myths. Please comment, like, share, and subscribe to Storycraft Studio for more legends of the soul.